economist Ismail Lagadin says colored communities are in the groups of violence made worse by lack of service delivery. In an opinion piece published in the Daily Maverick, he accuses the ANC of neglecting the community for the past 20 or so years. For more on the importance of this constituency ahead of the elections, we're joined in studio by Action SA Senate member Angela Sobe and United Independent Movement Vice President Fatima Abdul and Patriotic Alliance's Gauteng chairperson Dino Peterson. He's joining us via video link. You can be a part of the conversation tonight. Let's begin here, and anyone can take this. Is there such a thing as a so-called colored vote? Does it exist? Is there a particular interpretation of what that vote represents, how it behaves politically, and how it has been, I suppose, been articulated in the national narrative? Fatima in here. Fatima, let's talk a little bit about that. Is there a single homogeneous voting block or entity that is called the colored vote? And historically, what is that particular vote affiliated with?
I would like to latch on to what my colleague said, but this is what I call the colored vote a fluid vote. Because when you go into parliament or any governmental institution, you will find colored people in all the parties. So we are all over. Yeah. During the apartheid years or during the struggle, the colored people were part of the struggle. But for some reason, it seems like there's a bit of amnesia when it comes to the current governing party. They forget that the colored people were part and parcel of the struggle. And even some of the other African groups were part and parcel of the struggle, and they are just being sidelined. When you look at the different parties, the new parties that are coming up now, they are very much more interracial. Because personally, myself, would not like to be associated with a party that is only focused on one demographic. Yeah. That is why I joined the United Independent Movement, because they say that we are here for everyone, for South Africans. Yeah. Yes, we do recognize that the only group that is stagnant in terms of economic development, in terms of social development, etc., is the colored people. Yeah. Because yes, in the past they were used and they are still being used. And as I said in the beginning, it's a fluid type of vote. Yeah. People, they go where they see fits them. Yes. And I would like to encourage people and say, yes, look at a party and say to yourself, this is a party that speaks to me, not because it is a colored party, not because it represents only a specific group. We need to move away from that now. We need to move away from just being one specific group orientated. We are South Africans. It's because people have been doing that the past few years that the governing party has gotten away with things. And yeah, that's basically all I'd like to say. Do you know that? It's actually just bread and butter issues. Just the plain and simple things that all South Africans actually deserve. Service delivery, a job, food to eat, a roof over their heads. That's the basics. Education and security. That's the basics that all South Africans want. Yes. And so also the colored people. Yeah. So that is why I have an issue with the fact that we have to, fragment and specify the colored vote. But unfortunately we have to, because they are the second largest group in South Africa.
Why the fact is because there are now too many parties that are becoming colored parties, so to speak. Yes. That's the correct phrasing to use, right? I don't know what that is.
No, I agree with you.
But then the question becomes, this separateness, does it not then create some kind of inequality also in the electoral system?
It actually does. It actually does. It creates more fragmentations. It creates more little groups instead of people looking at a party and saying, does this party speak to me? Not, is it a colored party? Are the leaders colored? You see, the indigenous people, let's go there. The indigenous people of South Africa are not all the same. People look at us, we look different. When you go to the different provinces in South Africa, in KZN, that grouping is different. They're made up of Zulu and Indian and so on. When you go to the Northern Cape, the makeup there is different. In Gauteng is different. So instead of having an umbrella opinion of that specific group, because some call themselves Khoi, others say I'm not Khoi, I am colored, I am not colored, I am Griqua. So every person that is part of that group, they need to look at a party and say, does the party speak to me? Does the policies, the constitution, does what they stand for speak to me? Will they see to it that I get what I deserve? No special, nothing special, just everything that all South Africans are longing for.
Angela, why then have we abandoned the consensus on that non-racialism?
Who exactly has abandoned that?
Well, we seem to have, because that's why we have emerging of all sorts of parties that say, well, because we have been sidelined and marginalized all this time, so we'll start our own party.
I don't think that we've abandoned the non-racialism. The parties you see emerging are emerging in response to government's failures.
Exactly. The nation is on that toasty issue of race politics, but in particular this time looking at the impact of the colored vote and how this, as they put it, will swing the 2024 national elections. So before the break, we were raising this issue of whether, do we still pursue non-racialism?
See, the United Independent Movement has said from the beginning, something happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then we had the Truth and Reconciliation process. The truth came out, but reconciliation never did. And it suited the current government that we never get to reconciliation, because then the different ethnic groups in South Africa were then still fragmented and living separate, having perceptions of one another. And now it's survival of the fittest. At the moment, the 49 million so-called South African black people have got they've got a huge bouquet of parties that they can choose from, because they believe those parties will stand up for them. And then you have the 5.3 million colored people who they don't really know where to go to, and there's these mushroom parties, and they think that those parties will also give. I say to the people, look what those parties have done for the past 10 years. If they haven't spoken to what your needs are, then rethink that. And then you have the Indian and white vote. They basically kind of have their homes already. But it's the colored vote that always has to, move around, because they really just want to be accommodated in this country that they also fight for.
Let's talk about that, Robin. How has that colored vote moved around? Did it fundamentally change, for example, in terms of its voting preferences from the first democratic election, second, moving on and moving on and moving on?
It has actually diminished, because less and less people started voting because they were disillusioned. But now there's an awakening. Now people are saying, okay, we have more choices in terms of parties. We have more choices in terms of parties that speaks to our needs. However, I would like to admonish the colored people not just to run after parties because they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They need to be very critical and really analyze, become critical and analytical thinkers, see what the fruits are of what was being spoken, and then cast your vote. If you are being swayed and being, it's lekker, jolly kind of thing, because we make emotional choices, and that's where the problem comes in.
Fatima, is it too simplistic to say, and I've seen some groups that are beginning to talk about this, the South African government went to the ICJ, and others hailing that as a very important strategic move in attracting the colored vote?
Yeah, Shem, I laugh at that, because it's very convenient for the current governing party to do what they have done. I've said it on one of my lives that that was for me, and I think many people that are awake will know that is absolutely an electoral gimmick to get the votes of people that are. We, as the UIM, we are pro-life, we are pro-peace, so we will not be pushed in a direction, because we are not funded by anybody that comes from those two groups. But we are saying, yes, they are using that to manipulate the voter. I would like to say the following, and this is just putting a spanner in the whole works. The grouping called colored, it's a very convenient wording. because the only reason why we are called colored is because we are not called black or we are not called white. And because the mixtures, I mean, you could have gone for colored. You can be colored.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it just depends on how the mixture worked. Did it go darker or did it go lighter? Because everyone in South Africa is actually mixed race. It just depends on how the mixing worked. If we were in a country that voted according to the language that you speak, the Zulu, 24%, Xhosa, 16%, Afrikaans, 10%, Sepedi, 10%, English, 8%, Setswana, 8%, Sotho, 7%, Tsonga, 4%, Siswati, 2%, Shivenda, 2%, and Ndebele, 1.7%. If we had to go vote according to that, then there would have been a big difference.
Sure. Fatima?
Yeah, once again, it's that convenience thing. Sometimes it's convenient to call colored people, and sometimes it's convenient to call them Africans, South Africans. I would like South Africa to get to the point where we just speak of South Africans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where our children don't have to fill in a form to say race. It must just say South Africans.
Yeah.
Because the minute we do that, then there's that divide.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we say we want to build a better or we want to save South Africa, we need to do it on behalf of the generation that is still to come, because they actually don't have issues anymore. In some pockets, yes, when parents are still indoctrinating their children, but our children don't have issues. It's us as adults that brings in this racial things and so on. Our children actually just want to live in South Africa.
Yeah.
Just to make an example, in my case, I always say to people, I am all nations. My father's Indian. My mother's, my late mother was Xhosa. My sister's married to an Afrikaner guy from Bloemfontein. And the rest of my family is Africans. Sotho, Tswana, Zulu. So I can't sit here and say, we just have to speak on behalf of this race. We need to get to a point where we need to speak, where we can say, we are fighting for the rights of all South Africans.
Yes.
But at the moment, unfortunately, the people that have been governing this country for the past 30 years has made it almost impossible.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming and being a part of the conversation.